Welcome, everyone, to a Halloween special of Southern Discomfort. I am your host, the paranormal pastor, Ezekiel Kincaid, and I am sporting my Michael Myers getup. And I have with me tonight, by my side, Bethany the Clown.
I'm not a clown.
What are you?
Anonymous. It's an anonymous mask.
An anonymous mask, but you're not anonymous. We all know who you are.
Just get on with the show.
So Bethany is an anonymous clown for tonight.
You know what? The camera can go off. I only did this because you were complaining minutes before we got on. Oh, so you're just going to leave me? It was your idea to wear masks.
What was your idea to wear a mask?
No, it wasn't. I asked if that was something you wanted.
And I said yes. So you asked it. So you came up with it, asking the question.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So, I do like your, no, you said there was another name for it.
It's a Venetian mask.
Venetian clown mask, that's right.
It is not a clown mask.
So, all this stuff with Bethany not liking clowns, she wears a clown for Halloween.
I give up.
It's hiding your facial expressions of frustration towards me.
What did Dustin say? I'm Ebola when I hemorrhage together. I don't get, actually, I'm not getting comments other than Dustin, so you're on your own.
Oh, well, let's see. I see Shannon's in there. Welcome to the show tonight, Shannon.
Nope, the only person I can see is Dustin.
Oh. I see Shannon's name in there. And there is PW. Thank you, PW. She said we look good. Bethany is an anonymous clown.
No, I am not. Stop doing that.
I'm not doing anything. I'm telling everybody what you are. And I am, of course, Michael Myers. I'm what?
Nothing.
What'd you say?
Nothing.
Yeah, you did. It's hard to breathe and hear in these.
Here's what's funny. You look all jittery. You look like you don't have really a grasp on handling the mask thing. You look confused. It's funny.
I always look confused. It's hard to breathe and talk and hear in this thing. It's gonna come off any second. See if we got vodka vamp.
My mask is better than yours anyway. Just take it off.
No, I'm not. You take it off.
No. If I do, I turn the camera off. You know that.
Well, I'm taking mine off because I've got to read tonight.
Well, then take it off.
I am.
Oh, you're frozen. I can't see it.
All right. There we go. It's normal Zeke. Not that there ever was a such thing as normal Zeke.
That's relative.
It's me without the mask. So tonight we are going to do a special Halloween show, special Halloween readings. Hey, CC, welcome. But before we do that, we want to hear how everybody's Halloween has been. And maybe what y'all are up as, what y'all did before we get to some story readings from yours truly. So as y'all can see, I was Michael Myers. Bethany is the clown.
I'm not a clown, and the camera is going to go off here.
Why?
Because I'm not a clown.
Okay, let's take a vote in chat. Is Bethany a clown, or is she an anonymous Venetian?
Can
Let's vote. If you vote clown, put clown, and if you vote anonymous Venetian, put AV. Let's see what everybody says.
My squeaky chair. You know, I once read a horror story about a guy who was obsessed with a girl and actually put himself inside of her couch or chair.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was a pretty creepy story.
That's pretty cool. Nobody's voting yet. Dustin said you're a cotton candy, so that's clown. So it's one vote for clown.
Why don't we just get on with the stories?
Well, I'm trying to take a vote and hear what everybody thinks. I think at this point on the show, I think they just ignore me and my stupidity. They're not even choosing to vote. So, anyway, what I was going to say and suggest before we get into the reading tonight, and we'll take some time for more folks to hop on. But you know what movie we forgot to mention last week when we were talking about favorite horror movies and Halloween movies and all that stuff? And I can't believe that we forgot it. It's Campfire Tales. We got to mention Campfire Tales. It's 99, I think.
96.
96. That's when it was, 96. It is an anthology, and it is kind of like our movie. We put it up to mention it, even though that movie's been so special to both of us, right? Do you want to sing the song? Oh, how happy you have made me. Oh, happy you have made me. The song from that movie that we like to sing to each other. So anyway, if you haven't seen Campfire Tales 1996, get a hold of that one and watch it. It's really campy, a lot of fun. It's about these group of young adults, college students that break down. And
I thought high school.
Was it high school? You know, it's hard to remember in these 90s movies because they cast 30-year-old people to play high schoolers.
True, and if you look at the styles back then, everybody looked like they were in their early 30s.
Yeah. So anyway, they break down and they end up telling some stories around a campfire while they are waiting to be rescued. Oh, Vodka Bethany said you look like a rock chick from Kiss. Not a clown.
Oh, thank you. Actually, my mother named me after a song by Kiss. So thank you.
Yep. Oh, very sweet, Vodka Vamp.
Thank you.
So I hope everybody has had a great Halloween. I know I have had an exceptional one. It's been a lot of fun. Today, I started writing on a new book, which is the follow-up to my Dreadful Death series, which I'm going to be reading some of that tonight. Also watched The Exorcist today and the original Halloween, something I like to do every Halloween. So that was my day. Bethany, I know you spent your day entertaining kids. Am I correct?
Yes, mine were all sick last night, so they were home today because I was too afraid that they would throw up in school, so I kept mine home. So we did pumpkins, cupcakes, Disney stuff. I love them, but I'm glad they're in bed.
Yes. So tonight, I am going to be taking the time to read some scenes out of each one of my Dreadful Death books. That is the series you hear me talk about all of the time, that you hear me promote as being terrifying and scary. So I picked some places to read in the book, some scenes that were scary but don't give you everything. So they're kind of not the full extent of the horror. I'm not going to give you those scenes tonight. I'll save them for the book because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But the scenes that I'm going to give you are scary, and they do help you get a feel for the book. So I've got that series out that takes place in the Theodosia Tetramet universe. I also have some Southern Discomfort stories that go within this same universe and kind of play off the themes. And I wanted to share those with you all tonight and let you know you can get these all on Godless right now for about 50 or 99 cents. And the first one I want to show you is Call of the Tetramet. This one takes place in that same universe. This one is kind of a folk horror feel. It's got more of a feel of what the Dreadful Death books are like. And then another one I have in the Southern Discomfort series is, let's see where it is. There it is. This one is Tetramet Rising. This one follows a detective whose sons were murdered in a cult slaying that are connected to the Tetramet. And he is having to hunt down this cult and solve the mystery of what's going on, because this cult has cursed women in the city of Baton Rouge, and each of them are giving birth to the Tetramet's body parts, and they are going to put him together like some sort of sadistic Voltron so that he can hand out his wrath upon Earth. And the other one that takes place in the Tetramet universe is The Door. This one is a mother and her 2-year-old child who die in a plane and become a ghost. And they are stuck in the in-between trying to communicate with their family that they have left behind. The mom, Jen, has learned that the only way to gain enough energy to communicate with the other side is extreme love and extreme hate. Extreme love starts to work for her after a while, until jealousy begins to fill her heart and she begins to become resentful and hateful. And then she seeks out the Tetramet to find another answer, cross over. And that answer is not a good one and leads her down a very dark path. So those are on us right now. There's also a Halloween story. Sam Hain, like stuff with extreme horror that will really make you cringe. One is Today's the Last Day that Sam Hain's dying to be on sale for 50 cents. We'll go back to the normal price, 99 cents in November. So you can go ahead and grab that. Tonight will be the last night it will be on sale. So if you want that, you can get it for half off. But that is enough of that. Is everybody to get into story time? Ready, Bethany?
I am ready. Which story are you going to do?
What?
I am ready. Which story are you going to do?
Well, we're going to do some scenes out of each Dreadful Death book. So the first book in the series is The Dawning. And just to kind of give you the place where I am picking up at in the storyline without really giving too much away, but enough that you will understand when I start to read. In the beginning of the book, Theodosia starts off as a young child, and she begins to have visions and dreams of this entity, the tetramet. She also learns that she has this extreme psychic gifting, which back then they wouldn't have called it psychic powers. They would have called it mind power. So she's kind of starting to get a little taste of how those things work. So this is right at the beginning when she is just starting to get her taste of her mind powers, and she's just starting to get her feet wet with the darkness that is pursuing her. So I'm going to read a scene about where she has this real overtaking of energy with her mind powers. And I'm also going to read the scene where she is first introduced to her demonic guardian called Hophni. You remember those parts, baby?
I do. They're in for a real treat.
All right, everybody. So if y'all are ready, sit back, find a nice, comfortable place, and I am going to read to you these scenes from The Dawning. Then I'll probably take a little break for a second, and we can talk about something else real quick. And then we will jump into some scenes from the next book, The Gathering, and then after that, some scenes from the final book, The Morning. So here we go. This is The Dawning. Arose during the afternoon. Theodosia drifted in and out of after Jillian left. Hours later, she got out of bed as the rain clamored against the house. Theodosia left her room and floated down the stairs and made her way into the kitchen. Sarah, her mother, stood there cleaning a head of lettuce. Her dark red hair was pulled back and she scrubbed away. All the sounds in the room intensified in Theodosia's ears. The water trickling off the lettuce was what she noticed first. The sound was like the plunging of a body into a lake. Then Mother's washing. It arose like the scratching of a scrub brush on tile. Then there was the rain. It pounded like the crashing of rapids. Sarah began to sing, and each note lashed Theodosia's brain. She placed her hands over her ears and screamed. Theodosia's eyes witnessed strange things in those moments. She saw every crevice in the wood of the kitchen cabinets, as if her face was pressed against them. She was falling deeper and deeper into their canyons. Then there were the smells. The scent of manure exploded in her nostrils. She could taste it in the air, and it made her retch. Sarah shuddered at the sound of Theodosia's scream and dropped the head of lettuce to the floor. She spun around and saw her daughter vomit. "Theo!" Sarah screamed. She was bewildered and frightened. She darted over and put her hands on Theodosia's back. "Theo, what's wrong?" Sarah's pulse raced. Theodosia was hunched over, and waves of yellowish-white vomit flowed from her mouth onto the wood floor. She screamed in rapid succession between her retching. Sarah's worry heightened. She turned her lips down. The skin on her face tightened, and the vein in her forehead bulged. "Theo!" Theodosia dropped to the floor. Her face landed with a splat in the puddle of bile. Sarah screamed again and rushed to the ground. She lifted Theodosia's head and placed it in her lap. Theodosia's eyes burst open. A venerable look of trepidation was mangled onto her innocent face. "Theo! Theo!" Sarah shook her. "For God's sake, what's wrong, honey?" Sarah's shrill voice crippled Theodosia. It felt as though the inside of her ears were going to rupture, then spew out all over the kitchen floor. Theodosia curled into a fetal position and clenched her ears harder. She gnashed her teeth in pain and closed her eyes. She whimpers, trying to add any more in the room. Jillian came in response to the commotion. "Oh, God, Mother, what's wrong with her?" Jillian saw trembling Theo and his mother and pools of bile on the floor. Sarah didn't answer Jillian. She pulled Theodosia close to her and rocked. Jillian sat on the floor behind the feeble Theodosia and rubbed her sister's arms. Tears fell from Jillian's eyes, and her lip quivered. The hammering in Theodosia's ears subsided, and the throbbing in her head eased. Her breathing slowed, and she removed her hand from her ears. The smell of the manure faded, and she could no longer taste it in the air. Jillian was still massaging her, and Mother still held her. Theodosia looked up at her mother. Tears rolled down Sarah's face, and she was praying. Theodosia latched onto her mother and cried tears of her own, and Jillian relaxed her grip. Sarah scooped Theodosia up, cradling her in her arms. "Oh, my Theo," she cried. She rocked Theodosia for a moment, then looked over at Jillian. "Grab me a towel, then clean this up." Sarah motioned to the vomit with her head. Jillian nodded and obeyed her mother. Sarah had seen her daughter sick before, but this was different. This was not some fever or stomach ailment. Her child was in pain, a pain she'd never witnessed before. Those screams were blood-curdling. Hearing them made her heart sink into her stomach. Sarah's body still quivered in fear. "My baby, my sweet baby Theo, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong?" Sarah cried and rocked. How could Theodosia explain to Mother what had happened? She didn't fully comprehend what was going on either. Sarah asked again through sobs, "Theo, please. I can't help you if you... Please tell me." Theodosia gazed into Mother's frightened eyes with distress in her own. "I don't know, Mother." Jillian handed Sarah a rag. Sarah wiped Theodosia's face, then proceeded to her hair. She finished and handed the rag back to Jillian. Jillian began to clean up the vomit off the floor. Theodosia's ears mellowed, and she found comfort in the pounding of her mother's heart. She closed her eyes and felt Mother's lips press against her cheek. Jillian's hand rubbed her sister's back in gentle circles. The panic in Theodosia's soul fizzled away in the next few moments. She opened her eyes and lifted her head. She looked at Mother, and anxiety still covered her face like a mask. "Mother, the noise, it was too loud, too loud, too loud," Theodosia tapered off. "All right, baby, shh," Sarah said. "It'll be all right. We'll get you something to drink and get you back in bed. Would you like that?" Theodosia nodded. Let go of each. Jillian helped Theodosia to her feet, guided Theodosia to the table, and helped her into the chair. Sarah fetched a cup of water from the pitcher. Theodosia chugged it down, and then they guided her up to the stairs to her bedroom. Sarah said she would call for the doctor in the morning. The weather right now was much too merciless to travel in from town. Sarah tucked Theodosia in bed and kissed her cheek. Theo was calm and feeling better. The kiss brought serenity to Sarah's heart. Sarah stared at her daughter for a moment, then crawled in bed with her. Theodosia soon drifted into sleep with her mother by her side. Theodosia lived amid the state of wakefulness and slumber. A slow, rhythmic creaking sound awakened her from her sleep. She dismissed the noise and rolled over. Then she heard it again. It was a moaning sound, like the groaning of a wooden chair when one sits. Sleep was no more, and her consciousness was now invested in the land of the living. "Chair! Chair!" her mind screamed. In the right corner of her room, adjacent to the wardrobe, sat a brown rocking chair. Charles, her father, had built it for Sarah right before Jillian was born. Sarah had given it to Theodosia a few days ago because Theodosia insisted her dolls were growing ornery and needed to be wrought more. There was nothing extravagant about the chair. The fanciest part was the centerboard in the middle of the back. It was wide with elaborate designs on it. Theodosia homed in on the rhythmic creaking sound. She rolled onto her back and sat up in bed. She looked to her right, and Mother was gone. It was dark. She had no way of knowing what time it was. The curtains were drawn back, and the rain still fell. Theodosia shifted her vision to the corner of the room where the rocking chair sat. Her eyes had not yet adjusted to the dim light. All she could do was sit and wait for the picture to take shape like an artist on his canvas. The clouds parted just in the right spot to let a solitary beam of moonlight sneak through the window. The light traveled across the floor and stopped at the bottom of the rocker. Something sat in the chair, and it was rocking. Its feet shone a charcoal color in the moonlight. The cloven hooves were black with scratches across them. The texture of its skin looked like worn-out leather. The ankles bulged and the lower leg muscles knotted. The creature rocked and tapped its foot on the floor. Clop, clop, clop. The clopping sound echoed through the room, unsettled Theodosia. Lightning flashed, lighting up the room. Shroud of black the creature hid behind was pulled away, revealing its appearance. The being's entire body was the same color, and its legs and its skin were all the same leathery texture. The beast had no eyes. Protruding out of its eye sockets were horns. They curved around the top of its hairless head and rested just above its bat-like ears. Its nose was two thin slits nestled in its face. Its mouth had no lips and gaped open, revealing gnarled, opaque teeth. Its hands rested on the arms of the rocker. Its fingers bulged at the knuckles. Black, knife-like fingernails scratched away at the wood. The thunder banged, and Theodosia gasped at the sight. The creature heard her reaction and responded to her fear. Theodosia, I mean you no harm. Its voice grated like gravel being tossed around in a jar. The room faded to black again. Theodosia didn't answer. The lightning flashed, and Theodosia saw gobs of saliva dripping from its lipless grin. The being spoke again, reassuring her of its motive. I mean you no harm. Been sent to protect you until you're... Theodosia pulled her mouth away from the blanket. Her trembling voice trickled across the room to the creature. You sure don't look very nice. The creature laughed. Oh, I am not nice. Not at all. If you only knew the things I was capable of, child, the creature thought. But you will know soon enough. Anxiety tugged on Theodosia's heart. Then why are you going to help me? She pulled her blanket up to her chin. Then, not feeling quite protected enough, moved it over her nose. Because it's my job. I'm a guardian, the creature said. And duty was the most important thing. He had learned the hard way, in another life and in another time, just how important duty was. Theodosia grew more at ease and let her blanket fly down her face. What's your name? She asked. The creature stopped rocking. Hophni. That's a funny name. It's an old name. A very old name. The no eyes. He's staring window in contemplation. Theodosia sensed the air of affection in his voice. Are you old? Theodosia tilted her head. Yes, very. How old? Hophni laughed like he was a grandfather getting ready to tell his granddaughter an age-old story. I've been around since before Israel had a king. You're from Israel? Father has been... Was, Hophni interrupted. Huh? I don't Hophni continued. You will learn more as we go along. Now, he stood up from his chair, lifted it off the ground, and brought it to the edge of the bed. He sat down and resumed his rocking. You will see you need me. He turned his head and stared at the robe. That monster, one there, that I've seen, it's real? Theodosia asked. Hophni stayed on the wardrobe. Very real. Why is it after me? Because you have the power to bring them out of the plane. How? They sense the door opening. They sense your ability. That's why they're after you. Hophni returned his gaze to Theodosia. and there will be more, many more, but they cannot have you. You are his. If this were another time and place, and if Hophni were any piece of his former self, he would have felt compassion for the girl who cowered in the bed beside him. Her look of innocence, her uncorrupted purity, her mind which still dreamed big dreams. But he felt nothing now. No compassion, no remorse, no love. Those human sentiments died long ago. Now it was about duty. Theodosia had been called and chosen. It was his job to ensure she fulfilled her calling. This meant taking an up-close and personal view of seeing her innocence raped and destroyed. Theodosia didn't like the sound of belonging to someone she didn't know and being claimed like property. Who? Whose am I? She scowled. You'll find out in time. The ambiguity of this type of talk frustrated Theodosia. She yanked the blanket down to her lap. Why can't you just tell me now? I don't like this game. It's like what parents do with birthday presents. Hophni didn't smile. Theodosia reasoned it was because he had been here before, heard all the arguments and pleadings, and had thus become numb to it all. If it were up to me, I would, Hophni said. But it's not. I have orders. And trust me, you will find the answers you're looking for at the right time and in the predestined way. Pre-what? Theodosia curled her lip. She had never heard that word before. Predestined. What does that word mean? It means that your way has been marked out since before you were born. Theodosia didn't like the sound of that either. It angered her. No one can tell me what to do except God and mother and father, and sometimes my sister. Hophni laughed. It was last he had indeed been in these types of conversations before, and never toying with the uninformed. This mounted protest from girls that deny the truth of reality was common stock for the likes of Hophni. Young Theodosia, so naive, so ignorant, you have the knowledge of truth. Hophni tapped his fingernails on the arm of the rocker. Now, Hophni stood from the rocking chair. I'm going to sit over in the corner and wait. Do not look at me. Do not talk to me. When the handle of the wardrobe wiggles, open it, and then run like the wind back to your bed. I will handle the monster. And whatever you do, don't scream. Understood? Theodosia nodded and gazed at Hophni with wide eyes. Hophni grabbed the chair and walked to the corner where he first emerged. How come you don't have any eyes? Theodosia asked, fidgeting with her blanket. Hophni glanced over his shoulder at her. Eyes are the windows to the soul. And I don't have a soul. Then how can you see? Sight is more than vision, young one. Theodosia pondered his response and stopped asking questions. His answers made no sense at all. Hophni took his place in the corner. He sat down, and they waited. So I will stop there in the dawning. So that is the scene where Theodosia first meets her guardian, Hophni, and he begins to slowly yet surely corrupt her. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. That's just kind of a get your feet wet with the series. So that is towards the beginning of the dawning. If anybody's wondering, so it's a little bit of a slow burn in the first few chapters. Then right there where I picked up at about chapter 8 is when the story really starts to kick into high gear. And then once you get into chapter 8, 9, and 10, then all the way through the rest of the series, it's just high octane, full blast with the scares and stuff. So that one, if you have Kindle Unlimited, The Dawning is actually free on Kindle Unlimited. Anything you want to add, Boo Bear, before we get into the next part?
No, I always thought it was a really good build-up.
Thank you, baby. So, anybody have any questions or comments? I jump into the next book. I'll give you a little context about it before we do. QPW. Before I get started, let's scroll up and say to new people. PWCC, Boss George. Hello. Thanks for hopping in the chat. She's Shannon's still in there. Cool Gamer, welcome. Let's see, Vodka Vamp's still in there. Okay, I think I said hey to everybody. So thank y'all all for sticking around. We're just getting warmed up here. That from the Dawning was just to kind of get you in the mood for the darkness. We're going to go a lot deeper. So by the time we get to book 2, The Gathering, it is called The Gathering because Theodosia starts to begin to really develop her psychic abilities, and she is able to use her mind powers to manipulate her friends and her children, and she starts to gather them for her cult with to be a part of it with the Tetramet cult. And one of my favorite parts in this book is the Nightmare series. And this is the part of the book where Theodosia and Hophni visit all of the children that she's gathering in their dreams. And they have these very, very vivid and cool nightmares. So with a lot of y'all kind of liking stuff about dreams and visions and everything, I think you'll really find this part of the book cool. It's not the most intense part of the book. I don't want to spoil that for you in case there's some of you that want to get the books and read them. The intense part in this particular book is the first time when Theodosia is possessed and she reveals herself who she is to her mother, Sarah. That scene, I think, to this day, is probably one of the best and most terrifying scenes I've ever penned yet. Hope to surpass that with the next book that I'm doing, follow up to this series. So we're going to start off reading some of the dreams that the children have. This picks up in chapter 3. Caleb Finley stood at the bottom of an empty well. His blue eyes searched the stone walls, which were illuminated by the moonlight. He lifted his head back and looked up at the opening. It seemed 10 miles away. A breeze swept through and rustled his hair. Caleb curled his toes on the ground and glanced down. His feet were dry. There was no water in the well, but it still smelled musty. He placed his hands against the wall and circled. The stone was cool and damp to touch. He craned his neck to look over his shoulder. The bucket and rope were not there. He was trapped with no way out. The pressing sensation of claustrophobia washed over him. Caleb Finley screamed. Tears ran down his cheeks, and he turned in circles again. He clawed at the wall, trying to climb out of the cylindrical abyss. "Help me, Mother, Father, I'm scared." His shouting and efforts to escape were useless. The wall was now too damp. and he couldn't find a secure holding for his fingers to grip. Dark shadows draped around the well where the moonlight refused to shine, hiding portions of the stone wall. Caleb! Something whispered his name. It was a low murmur, almost inaudible, with a deep, grating tone. Caleb, his youthful body shuddered. He shook so hard all I could hear was the rattling of his teeth. His legs wanted to come beneath him, and his bladder ached. He wrapped his arms around himself to stop trembling. Caleb! The voice spoke his name again, this time louder. A warm breath settled on the back of his neck. Body shaking, he turned around. Why he turned around to face the voice, he didn't know. His mind beckoned him to be still and close his eyes. Step, frightened child, his feet shuffled towards the voice. He faced the direction from where it originated. There was nothing but the dark. Then a clopping sound like sluggish hoofbeats echoed through the well. Something stirred in the shadows. A tall, dark figure emerged. Strips of moonlight created flashes of light across his towering frame. Caleb's wide eyes climbed up every inch of the creature. Its skin was charcoal in color and leathery in consistency. It had no eyes. Instead, black horns protruded from its sockets. Its teeth were jagged and opaque, and it had no lips. The monster knelt by Caleb. "Hello, child," he said. The demon's warm breath rushed over Caleb's face. Summer breeze. It smelled of sulfur and rot. The boy stared into Hophni's face. All the fear retreated from his heart, and his trembling subsided. He felt safe and at peace. The monster's voice didn't scare him anymore. "Hi," Caleb said. He smiled and reached out a hand. He ran over the demon's horn. It was cold, covered up. "Do you know why you're here?" Caleb shook his head. "You're here because I need to tell you something." "Who are you?" Caleb asked. He eased his hand away, staring deep into the creature's face. "My name is Hophni, and I'm a guardian." "A guardian of what?" "Not of what, my child, but of who." "Well, who then?" "Theodosia." Caleb's blue eyes twinkled. "My friend." "Yes, your friend. It's very important that you listen to her, understand? She knows the secrets. When it's time, you will hear her speak to you." His head and furrowed his brow. The creature's teeth seemed to absorb the moonlight. "I don't understand." Hophni chuckled. "You will, in time. Just let her." Caleb nodded. "I will, Mr. Hophni, I promise." Hophni stood to his feet and faced the wall. He disappeared in the shadows, his hood making that echoey clippity-clop sound. The dream ended. Annabelle Edwards sat at her desk in the schoolhouse. She swung her feet, her toes grazing the wooden floor. She surveyed her room. Her classmate there was alone. "Hello," she said. "Avonlea? Miss Tate?" Annabelle looked at the wall. They were changing colors, from red to black to burnt to gray, over again. She turned her attention to the chalkboard at the front of the room. The slate stone on the face of the board bubbled like a pot of boiling water. The black liquid popped, morphing the slate into human skin. Then, one after another, beating hearts appeared around the trim. The pounding intensified with each materializing heart, sounding like war drums. A rank smell filled the room. Annabelle buried her face in the collar of her dress. The scent was like nothing she had smelled before, the mixture of manure composing marine life. Annabelle coughed a few times and studied the walls again. They stopped changing colors, and a gray haze settled over the room. The doorknob to the room wiggled, and her eyes darted to the brass knob. It turned with a gradual motion, then stopped. The knob clicked, and the door eased open. and leaned forward might come through the threshold. A clopping sound like hooves came first. The creature appeared in the doorway, and all of Annabelle's breath left her. She turned pale and felt as if she would retch all over the desk. She tried to push herself away and run towards the window. Her arms and legs wouldn't move. She was paralyzed, and no matter how much she willed them to comply, they remained motionless. Her mind screamed with its might and arms and legs, commanding them to move, but they would not obey. Annabelle sat helpless as the monster entered the room. The creature wore a black suit several sizes too big. It had horns for eyes, curving and sitting atop its pointy ears. The monster had clear, jagged teeth with no lips. It lifted its skinny arm and waved at Annabelle, its black fingernails dancing in the air. Hophni walked to the blackboard, now turned into flesh. He faced Annabelle and crossed his arms over his waist with one hand, gripping his wrist. "Hello, class. My name is Professor Hophni." The demon gave a slight bow. Annabelle flinched at the sound of Hophni's voice. The low, guttural grinding poured her soul when she began to cry. "Shall I write that for you?" Hophni faced the flesh board. He extended his pointer finger of his right hand and raised it to the board. He placed his long black fingernail against the flesh and wrote. Annabelle expected a grating, high-pitched scratching sound forth, like when the boys ran their fingernails down the blackboard to annoy everyone. But the flesh board didn't screech. It screamed. No, wailed was more like it. The harrowing howl reverberated from the flesh and vibrated through Annabelle like crashing thunder. The screams grew louder. Each laugh he wrote. Writing his, he turned to face it to Annabelle. He held out his hand underneath the word Hophni. "Now we are friends. And because we are friends, you no longer need to be afraid," Hophni said. The sound of his voice flowed beautifully in Annabelle's ears. A serene peace washed over her, and the fear was now a distant memory. She smiled at Hophni. "Yes, friends." She brushed a strand of her copper-colored hair behind her ear, and her green eyes glowed in the gray haze of the room. "Now, as friends, I need you to do something for me." "Yes, what?" She folded her hands, placing her arms on the top of her head. Hophni turned to face the flesh board again. He picked up a piece of chalk, resting on one of the beating hearts at the bottom of the board. He held the chalk for Annabelle to see and watched her over his shoulder as it changed severed fingers. He grinned at her hands. Pleased with her reaction, he twirled in his hand and with the severed end began to write on the flesh board. Blood flowed from the wounded end of the finger. Annabelle sounded out the letters as Hophni wrote. Theodosia! Annabelle yelled her friend's name with fond excitement. "She's my friend, my very best friend." "Indeed she is," Hophni agreed, waving the severed finger, "and I need you to listen to her. She will speak one day, and when she does, you will understand." Annabelle shook her head and narrowed her soft eyes. "She speaks all the time, and I understand her perfectly." "She will speak in a different way one day. And when she does, you'll know." Hophni placed the severed finger back on the edge of the beating hearts. He faced Annabelle and bowed. "Class dismissed," he said. Hophni left the room, and the dream ended. There are several more dream sequences. If y'all want me to keep reading, I can read some more dream sequences, or we can go to the morning. I see Mayhem is with us. Hey, Face the Ace too. Thank y'all for stopping by for our horror reading night tonight. What happened to Bethany?
It kicked me off.
What'd you do?
I didn't do anything. It kicked me off.
Oh, okay. Well, I pulled you back on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm trying to see if anybody wants, they want me to keep reading some more of the dream sequences, or if they want to go ahead and jump to the next book, to the morning. RPI Paranormal's in here. Hey, thank you for stopping by. Have I missed anybody else? I think I got everybody. All right, PW says, read more of the dream sequences. Everybody all right with that? We have several more. Ooh, the next one. I like the next one. It's one of my favorites. One of the favorites of the dream sequences. I can't talk. You'll remember this one, Bethany. This one is a dream sequence about a dollhouse and creepy dolls. So those of you who are creepy doll fans, you're going to love this dream sequence.
I do, but that wasn't, if you remember, that wasn't my favorite one.
Your favorite one was the deer one, wasn't it, with Joel?
Nope, the carriage.
Oh, the carriage one. That's right. Yeah, that was Clara Duncan's vision. So I will read. I'll read Hannah Finley's dollhouse dream vision, and then I will read Clara Duncan's black carriage dream sequence, and then we will move on to the morning, to the third book in the series. Hannah Finley stood at the foot of the most exquisite house she had ever seen. Her blue eyes widened, and the cheeks on her fair skin burned red with excitement. Before I go on, just to give y'all a little context, Caleb Finley and Hannah Finley are twins, boy-girl twins in the story. So the dream sequence I read with Caleb, this is his sister's dream sequence now. The house was ivory in color and 4 stories high. The flat roof was surrounded by an elaborate white railing. The top 2 stories had 5 windows across the front, each with a unique design on its trim. 2 sets of marble stairs led up to the second story, where they met and formed an awning at an oak-colored door. The bottom of the stairs met into an archway, leading to another oak-colored door on the first floor. The house itself seemed to give off a radiant light, while all around it stayed as black as night. Something about the house seemed familiar to Hannah. She studied its design a few moments longer. Then the recollection came. The house resembled the dollhouse she saw in the window of the general store last Christmas. She begged and begged her father for it, but he refused, telling Hannah such a house was more than they could afford. Hannah tossed her blonde hair over her shoulder and approached the steps. She ran a hand over the smooth marble staircase. It was warm, as if it had been baking in the sun for hours. She eased her foot onto the stairs and ascended, the slow clicks from her shoes sending out mellow echoes. Hannah stood before the oak door. Intricate circular designs ran along the outside corners of the door. In the middle, a grotesque knocker stared back at her. The knocker was black and shaped like the head of some strange creature she had never seen before. Its face was human-like with no eyes. Horns grew out of the sockets and curled around, resting on the creature's pointy ears. It had no nose, and the handle was held in place by the creature's jagged teeth. Hannah gazed at the knocker for what seemed like hours. She wanted to go into the house to see what marvelous furniture it contained, but she did not want to touch the knocker. Its very presence made her skin crawl. "Why don't you knock?" a voice said. It was deep, guttural and growling. Hannah gasped, placing a hand over her mouth. Her body stiffened. The voice, she thought. It came from the knocker. Hannah stared at the knocker, waiting for movement. But it lay still. Why won't you knock? The voice asked again. This time there was movement. The teeth of the knocker rippled like a wave in the ocean. She took a step back and shook her head. Her eyes rounded and her lips parted. Don't you want to see what's inside? The knocker asked. Hannah gave her head 2 quick shakes. Oh, now, Hannah, I have wonders to show you. Hearing the knocker call her name unsettled Hannah. How do you know my name? She demanded. Because I'm your friend. You're not my friend, Hannah's nostrils flared. I don't know you. Yes, the knocker said, but you know Theodosia. Hannah's features softened. Why, yes, she's my friend. Is she your friend? Of course, the knocker said. How do you know her? Hannah asked. Theodosia and I have been friends since she was 7. I rescued her from scary monsters. Hannah cocked her head to the side. She curled her lip and furrowed her brow in confusion. So you're not a scary monster? Oh, no, not at all, child. I'm a guardian. Hannah twitched her lip and closed one eye. Well, if you're Theodosia's friend, and if you fight scary monsters, I guess we can be friends. Perfect, the knocker said. Why don't you knock on the door so I can open it? Then you can come in and see what I have to show you. Hannah nodded. Very well. She stepped toward the door, reaching out her hand, and grabbed a hold of the knocker. It was warm and soft on top, yet firm underneath. She lifted the knocker and hit it against the door 3 times. A latch clicked and the door creaked open. Hannah stared down a dark way. The only illumination came from 2 lamps hanging on the walls, one on the left and one on the right. She stepped through the door, and 2 more lamps ignited. She studied the walls. Odd patterns were sketched in the ivory veneer. Hannah glanced down. Checker colors of ivory and jade decorated the floor. She walked forward, every step resulting in the illumination of more lamps. Hello, Hannah said. Are you there? Keep walking. First room on your left, the voice from the knocker said. Hannah placed one foot in front of the other and paced down the hall. Arrived at the first room on the left and peeked inside. The contents of the room hid behind a blanket of darkness. Hello, Hannah said again. Is this where you are? Come in, the voice said. Hannah crossed the threshold. Light shone down on the room in intermittent places, coming from nowhere in particular. A round white table sat on the left side of the room. An exquisite feast had been prepared, complete with the finest china little Hannah Finley had ever seen. Hannah's mouth watered and her stomach growled. The food smelled delicious, and she didn't want to wait another moment to eat. She skipped to the table, and more light shone about her, this time on the chairs around the table. In her mind, Hannah jumped backwards with a brisk motion. Her body, however, didn't cooperate as fast. The motion was slow, Hannah's limbs becoming more rigid. There were people sitting in the chairs. Hannah recognized each one. Annabelle and Avonlea Edwards, her brother Caleb, Joel Abernathy, Ann Owens, and Clara Duncan. Sitting in the middle on the opposite end of the table, staring back at Hannah, was Theodosia. Their appearances looked different, very different. Hannah studied her friend's odd form. Oh, heavens! She clasped her hand to her mouth and took a step back. These weren't her friends at all. Dolls made to look like them. Hannah dropped her hands and smiled. The detail amazed her. The dolls resembled her friends almost perfectly. If it hadn't been for the light reflecting off their skin and the funny way the eyes were painted, Hannah wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. Sit, the voice commanded. Hannah's knees wouldn't bend. The sensation scared her, and her eyes expanded in fright. The voice must have known she was scared. It spoke to her again. Don't be frightened, Hannah. I won't harm you. Now come. Hannah's steps were like the march of a toy soldier. She sauntered to the chair across Theodosia. She adjusted and sat as best she could. Hannah put her arms on the table, and that's when she noticed. The sound clued her in at first. When she set her arms on the table, they made a clinking sound like glass. She glanced down to see her porcelain arms shimmering in the light. The room shook and spread down the middle. Hannah was paralyzed. She couldn't move at all. Not her arms, not her legs. She couldn't even turn her head. Her small heart raced, thudding so hard against her ribcage she thought it might bust out onto the table. Her eyes grew wet with tears, and all she wanted was her mother. Hannah tried to scream, and her mouth wouldn't open. She heard her awful cries ringing in her ears. The crack in the middle of the room expanded, drawing the left side of the room away from the right. And still couldn't on the other side. It was still shrouded in blackness. She squinted. It looked like a couch and a large grandfather clock taking shape in the shadow. A faint light showed the crack above her head. The crevice expanded and more light. Then she saw it, or him, or something. The face. The face from the knocker hovered over the room, except it wasn't just the face. It was connected to a head, and the head was connected to the body, and the body was enormous. Hello, Hannah. Recognize me? The creature asked, looking down at her. Hannah was able to nod. Let me introduce myself. My name is Bethany, and I am a guardian. Theodosia's guardian, to be precise. Isn't that right, Theodosia? What happened next sent chills into Hannah so deep she could have sworn her insides were going to freeze. Hophni's gigantic hand reached in through the crack and grabbed the Theodosia doll by the head and made it nod. Then he spoke in a high-pitched voice with his guttural, gravel-laden tone. Yes, that's right, Hophni, and I have something to tell you, Hannah. Hannah stared at Hophni's bulging gray knuckles and his long black fingernails. Then her eyes moved to the crack in the room where his other hand was coming towards her. Hannah tried to get up and run. Her extremities were still stiff and unmoving. She sat paralyzed, a prisoner in her own body, watching this mob tea time as a spectator. Hophni's hand gripped the back of Hannah's head, making her nod. Then Hophni spoke in a variation of his high-pitched voice, pretending to be Hannah. Oh, please tell me, Theodosia. I must know. Hophni pretended to be Theodosia. Don't be scared of Hophni. He's on our side. You must listen to him. There will come a day when I will and speak to you in a way that you've never heard me speak. When I call, you must obey. Hophni spoke as Hannah now. Oh, Theodosia, I will obey. I will listen. I like Hophni. He's not scary. Very good, Hannah. Very good. Hophni released the Theodosia doll and grabbed her 2 hands. He lifted her from the chair and brought her out of the house. Hophni held Hannah in his arms close to his chest. He went and sat down in a rocking chair. He rocked and hummed to Hannah. At first, Hannah thought her heart was going to explode from fear. But when Hophni began to hum, streams of peace flowed over her. His voice calmed all her fears and anxiety. Her eyes grew heavy, and she fell asleep in the demon's arm. The dream ended. So that is the dollhouse one. If you give me a moment, I will find the one that Bethany likes. Let's see, we got, before I get to the next one, let me say hey to whoever jumped in here. Triple X Lady, hello. Kenny Weaver, hello. Thank you for coming by for Halloween story time. But that was a dollhouse one. That one's my favorite. And now I'm going to read you Bethany's favorite. dream sequence. This one is with Clara Duncan. Clara Duncan stared out the window of a black carriage. Her brown eyes widened in delight as she passed the field of crested irises. When Clara smiled, her dimples hid a tiny scar from when she fell off a horse and got a twig logged in her cheek. But then the 10-year-old girl tucked her caramel hair behind her ears and leaned closer to the window. The sunlight shone on the fresh dew, causing the flowers to sparkle as purple diamonds. The field seemed to go on for miles. Clara enjoyed the flowers. She studied them and noticed their form starting to change. The flowers grew in height, and deep red scales appeared on the stems. The purple petals turned in on themselves and crumpled into a ball. The balls on each flower expanded, the purple color disappearing, and faded into black. 2 horns then grew out the top of each ball. Appeared in the balls. Some outdoors pushed against them. A slit formed at the bottom. Then something like glass teeth grew from the crevice. Clara cupped both hands to the window and placed her face between them, trying to be certain of what she saw. Yes, the petals of the flowers morphed into the head and face of some awful-looking creature. Horns grew out of the creature's eye sockets, and its mouth was open, revealing jagged teeth. She looked up at the sky through the window. The sunlight was fading. Its light diminished, and its countenance turned black. The sun then crumpled into ash and disappeared. Clara's joy dwindled along with the vanishing sun. All around her was pitch black. It was a darkness Clara had never experienced before. She couldn't see the inside of the carriage. She couldn't see the window or the field. She couldn't even see her own arms. She rubbed them to see if they were still there. A hint of relief hit her when she felt their raised flesh. The relief lasted but an instant. A sense of mild terror scratched at the back of her throat, and her chest tightened. "I don't like this," Clara said into the black void. There was no response. Darkness remained her world. Her voice whispered, "Please, I can't see. I'm scared." Clara focused with her ears. She could still hear the turning of the carriage wheels and hoofbeats. While she listened to their droning sound, she was startled by a popping noise, like the striking of a match. A small fireball appeared a few feet from her face. It glowed orange and illuminated the carriage. The fireball expanded a tad more, letting Clara see the inside with clarity. She tilted her head and brought a hand near the fireball. She felt its warmth against her palm, like holding one's hand over a hot stove. She was too entranced by the floating fire to notice the inside of the carriage change. One by one, blinking eyes of various sizes and colors appeared, covering the interior. The hand near the fireball was hot. Her other hand rested on the seat. The texture beneath was cold and squishy. She glanced down at her hand. Her finger rested on top of an eyeball, the circumference of a dinner plate. The eye blinked and swallowed her hand in a sheet of flesh. The skin underneath the eyelids slid over her hand. It was wet and mucus-laden. The eye opened, and Clara's hand was covered in a yellow film. It all happened so fast, the terror of the situation didn't register in her young brain. She examined her hand, and the panic ignited. The nauseating grip of fear latched onto her soul, and she screamed. Clara leaped off the carriage seat, careful not to brush her face against the ball of fire. Her eyes darted from the seat to the ceiling to the walls. Everything was covered in eyes, blinking at intermittent periods. Clara screamed again. She turned to bang on the windows with her fist and paused. The glass was gone. It had been replaced with a thin layer of flesh. She pushed against it with her hand, and it stretched. Farther and farther it expanded, never ripping or busting. Clara moaned in frustration and faced the floating ball of fire again. "Let me out, please. Stop the carriage. Stop now." Clara's breathing turned to rapid wheezes, and she grew headed. Claustrophobia pressed against her soul. She was stuck, trapped in the carriage for good. Then she heard a voice. It was deep and gurgling. Clara, there's nothing to be afraid of. Turn the handle, open the door, and come join me. If Clara had been in any normal circumstances, she would have run miles away from such a voice. But right now, it was her only deliverance. She looked to the right side of the carriage, and the door was there again. The eyes which once covered it were gone. The red padded interior stared back at her. She grabbed the handle and opened the door. The carriage moved at a snail's pace. Clara grabbed the side handle and, placing one foot on the step, heaved herself up out of the carriage and onto the driver's bench. The ball of fire had followed Clara out of the carriage and now rested several feet above her head. To her left, a figure dressed in a black suit and white shirt sat next to her, driving the carriage. A large black top hat, several sizes too big, covered the upper portion of its face. The shadows covered the rest. Clara's sight moved to the figure's hands. They were thin and gray, with long black fingernails. In them he held the reins. Clara gazed ahead into the blackness to see what the reins were attached to. The light from the fireball wasn't strong enough to illuminate that far. It didn't matter to her. What mattered was she felt safe in the stranger's presence and was glad to be out of the carriage. If this person meant her harm, they wouldn't have rescued her. Why were you afraid? The stranger asked. I don't want anything happen to you. Clara fidgeted in her seat. It got really dark. Yes, but I sent you light. Clara peeked up at the fireball above her head. Yes, well, you did, but then there were those eyes. The stranger laughed. Clara grew irate and curled her nose at him. Why are you laughing? They were eyes, my dear child, not mouths. They wouldn't have harmed you. The stranger stared straight ahead. Well, Clara folded her hands, they still frighten me. Why were they there? As a symbol. A symbol? Clara wiggled her nose. Yes, dear, a symbol. They are telling you to keep watch and be aware. Aware of what? Theodosia Whitfield. Clara smiled. My friend Theodosia? Why? She has an important thing to show you. Keep watch and listen. She will speak to you in a new way. Clara studied the stranger's body. Not only was his hat too big, but his clothes seemed to swallow him. Will I understand? The stranger gave her a slow nod. What's your name? Clara asked. Hophni, the stranger said, and tipped his hat. Clara got a good look at his face when his hat lifted off his head. It was a face from the flowers. Black horns protruded from his eye sockets, curved around the top of his head, and rested above his pointy ears. He had a big mouth with opaque, jagged teeth. You're the face from the flowers, Clara grinned. What are you? A guardian, my child. More specifically, Theodosia's guardian. A guardian for what? Is someone going to try to harm my friend? Hophni glanced down at Clara and smiled with his jagged teeth. Yes, someone and some things. But I don't want you to worry your pretty little about that. That's my job. I won't let anything happen to Theodosia. I just need you to listen to her when it's time. Can you do that for me? Yes, I can. Clara nodded and smiled. Thank you, Hophni said. The ball of fire resting above Clara's head elevated higher. The movement caught her attention. Her eyes followed as if ascending higher into the sky. It traveled upward and expanded in size. Higher and higher it went, and larger it grew. The ball of fire then took its place above the clouds, illuminating dark and giving daylight again. Clara was now able to see what was at the end of Hophni's reins. The reins were not reins at all. They were giant tendons. Her eyes followed the tendons to the thudding sound. Connected to the end of the tendons was a giant severed hand. The fingers galloped away as the knuckles bent, pulling the carriage along. Clara's stomach cramped and her face grimaced. She recoiled at the sight and heard a grating laugh come from Hophni. His genteel mood settled her. She smiled up at the creature and laughed along with him. Then the dream ended. All right. We will take a little break here. See if I missed anything. All right. I don't think we had any new people hop in. All right. Y'all gonna have to give me a minute to recover here before I move on to the next book. But thank y'all for listening. I hope that y'all have enjoyed the dawning and day, enjoyed those dream sequences. That was one of my favorite parts to write. Sequences and the possession scene that I was telling y'all about. You still there, Blondie?
Yeah, I'm here. I was listening.
Oh, all right. Are you happy I read your dream sequence that you like for you?
Very. So what are you going to do now?
All right. So for the last segment, we are going to get into the last book, The Morning. This is the darkest book of the series. In the other ones, well, actually, only in the Dawning, there's maybe a few moments of let. Spring is all dark; it does not let up. This one is even worse. Very intense. I wanted to read the chapter in here because this is no secret, because I've written this in a short story that has been published in an anthology, and it's going to be published soon in Southern Discomfort in the Theodosia short story that I have written. But I'm gonna read out of chapter 10, and what has happened at this point in the story is Sarah, Theodosia's mom, has been institutionalized. Theodosia has driven her mother to the point of insanity. Her father, Charles, he is a scholar of ancient manuscripts, and he was away on a trip meeting with one of his colleagues, and they were actually studying an ancient document that they found about the tetramet. And he was visiting his wife, Sarah. They were in Virginia. And he is on his way home now to visit to go back home and check on his girls, Jillian, the older sister, and Theodosia. So at this point in the story, this is getting towards the end of it. This whole book right here, Theodosia is 13 years old. And so the whole book takes place during that year time period. And this is in the winter of 1824 in January. So this is really the last couple days in the book are what are all the final like 15, 20 chapters. It all takes place over a series of a few days, the really dark events. So this is what happens when Charles leaves to go on his trip, and he leaves Theodosia and Jillian alone in the house. Jillian at this point is very leery of her sister. She's not sure what to think. She sees flashes of good, flashes of evil. But at this point, Theodosia's got her a little duped, so she's not as frightened to be home alone with her. So you are going to hear what happens between the two girls when Charles leaves out of town. Girls, Charles called up the stairs. I'm leaving. It was late January, and it was clear from Chapel Hill to the asylum in Virginia. Charles was using this chance to go visit Sarah. Coming, Charles heard Jillian call. He listened as his daughter's footsteps pounded across the upstairs hall. Jillian came down the stairs first, with Theodosia right behind her. Goodbye, Father. We'll miss you. Jillian gave him a hug. She could smell the scent of his friend. Yes, Father. Theodosia slipped in and embraced them both. We will miss you. Charles kissed them each on the forehead. It's only for 5 days. I'll be back before you know it. If you need anything, go ask the Edwardses. They are aware I'm leaving. So go see them a few times while I'm out to let them know you are well. Yes, Father, Jillian said. She wanted to go see her mother again. She wanted to embrace her, to feel her touch. But she was afraid. It didn't go well when she visited Mother time. Mother had lost her mind and accused Jillian of protecting Theodosia, thus siding with the devil. Yes, Father, Theodosia echoed. Theodosia had no desire to go see Mother. She hoped the nag would rot away in the asylum. Very well, Charles said, breaking their embrace. He walked out the door, mounted Baby, their horse, and rode off to see Sarah. The sisters stood and watched as their father faded into the distance. You didn't want to go with him? Theodosia asked. She shook her head and placed a finger to her lip. She glanced down at Theo. It happened over the last moment there. Place, Theo. She faced her sister. So sad and hopeless. And Mother. Jillian's eyes glassed over in remembrance. The screams, Jillian continued. The maddening howls. She stared at Theodosia in the eyes. And seeing Mother pleading and crying, wanting to come home, she shook her head again and looked at me. Then accusing me of... Jillian trailed off. Accusing you of what? Theodosia asked. I can't. Jillian shook her head, eyes still focusing on the ground. I understand, Theodosia said. She turned and walked towards the house. Jillian stood staring at the black dot in the distance. That was Father. No, you don't, Theo, she thought. You don't understand. And how could you? How could you? Jillian shivered and rubbed her hands over her arms. Theo, she called, wait for me. Jillian followed her sister back into their home. 3 days passed, and Jillian went over to the Edwardses to let them know how she and Theo were faring with Father gone. Miss Edwards had made the girls baked chicken, potatoes, and fresh vegetables. Jillian brought the meal home, where she and Theo devoured it in minutes. The girls made small talk, cleaned up after dinner, then got ready for bed. Jillian went to her room to read, and Theodosia went to hers to play with her dolls. Theodosia hadn't played with them for years, but for some unknown reason, she felt the urge to hold them tonight. She grabbed Joanne first and cradled her in her arms. She smelled the doll's white porcelain frame and strawberry blonde hair. The poor thing hadn't been played with for so long, she had lost her fresh scent. She now smelled old and musty, as if she'd been locked away in a closet for years. Theodosia wrinkled her nose. Sorry, Jojo, old friend. I won't neglect you anymore. I will freshen you up tomorrow. She kissed Joanne on her rosy cheek and ran her fingers through her hair. Theodosia straightened the doll's white dress, adjusted her pink bow, then pulled back the covers and nestled into bed. Revisiting old pastimes, I see. Hophni appeared in his chair. Jillian gave me this doll, Theodosia said, then yawned. Feeling sentimental? Hophni started to rock. Theodosia sat up in bed and placed Joanne beside her. The doll's large eyes stared back. Theodosia said in a flat tone, something is going to happen. Time. It's it. Go to him in the plane. He's expecting. No, Theodosia said. She grabbed Joanne and laid back down. She eased the doll close to her chin. Theodosia's eyes grew heavy. Moments later, she was in the white room standing before the black doorway. Joanne swayed by her side from a clenched hand. The doll's head hung down as if she were sad or grieving. Theodosia stepped through the doorway, and the tetramet was there to greet her. Things will be set in motion tonight, he said. Which things? Theodosia asked. The things which you have been groomed for since you were young. Theodosia's eyes grew dark, and the skin on her face became tattered. She sprouted her wings, and her flesh turned an ashen color. In the beginning, she said, Theodosia fucked over heaven and earth. Let the slaughter begin. The tetramet placed his paw on Theodosia, and with a gentle motion, turned her to the left. The snakehead of the tetramet's tail came into her view. The mouth opened, and inside stood the red door. Start with your sister, the tetramet said. The cleaver is on the butcher block. Theodosia gave a deep chuckle, her shoulders rising and falling with her laughs. Madness like storm clouds swirled behind her eyes. The peeling layers of her flesh jiggled as she took deep breaths. I will bleed her, devour her. You will also experience something new and different. What do you mean? Theodosia asked. You will experience what it's like to be in many places and many realities at once. More so than you ever have. The tetramet walked into the wall of the plane, the gel-like substance absorbing him. Theodosia followed him. Explain, she demanded. The sparkling lights in the wall dimmed, and all around them became pitch black. Open your mind to me, the tetramet said. Reach for me with your mind powers, and I will reach for you. Our souls will unite. You will be in me, and I will be in you. He stroked her hair with his claw. As you wish. Theodosia closed her eyes. She gripped Jojo's arm and opened her mind. She gave her all to the tetramet. The tetramet felt the full force of Theodosia's power pressing upon him. He opened his mind and let her in. Once her consciousness was within him, he projected his essence towards her. And Theodosia entered the tetramet's mind and screamed. She dropped the doll, and Jojo toppled to the ground. Theodosia fell to her knees in anguish, clutching the side of her head and gnashing her teeth. The memories of the tetramet's mind made nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. The suffering, the carnage, the hate, the blood. So much blood. Theodosia had seen these things before, but never to this extreme. It was slaughter upon slaughter, from the beginning of creation until now. Angels, demons, humans, creatures. No one and no thing was exempt from the tetramet's wrath. Then there were the smells. Blood, rotting fruit, sulfur, dead marine life. She could taste it all. Men, women, children, and supernatural beings hung from meat hooks, swaying back and forth. The bodies hung from a dead tree with twisted, thick branches snaking in every direction. They cried out to the tetramet for mercy as he skinned them alive with his claws and fed their flesh to his serpent tail. The flesh of his victims would rejuvenate, and then the tetramet would repeat the process, leaving them caught in a vicious cycle of pain and horror. But then another memory. A beautiful lady, black hair, olive skin, perfect body. It was Lilith. Then another memory. The tetramet was holding Lilith. She was in pain. He was sad, angry. There was a flash. Theodosia saw something new. A fight. The tetramet was battling some angelic being. The tetramet killed it. More carnage and suffering. The tetramet was in a nursery surrounded by cribs and screaming women. The babies were crying. He picked them up and one by one bit the heads off and gave the carcasses back to the mothers. Then she knew. He wanted the children. He had always wanted the children. The terror, initial shock in Theodosia over the carnage settled, and she stood to her feet. Waves of hatred, anger, lust, and bitterness engulfed her entire being as the Tetramet's astral body entered her, and she loved it, every blasphemous moment. Her heart burned, and unprecedented strength radiated through her spirit. We are now one, the Tetramet said. I and you and me. And I and the children, Theodosia growled. Yes, the Tetramet said. After you kill your sister and eat her, you will call to them. When you do, you will enter them. You will see what they see, and you will lead them. You will also sense me in you, and I will be leading and guiding you. Theodosia tried to imagine what such an experience would be like. The Tetramet knew her thoughts. Don't try to imagine what it will be like. You will not succeed. It simply must be experienced. The Tetramet, Theodosia nodded. To begin with, you will see what it's like to be in your reality and the reality of the plane simultaneously. When you see the red door that goes back to your reality, you will walk through it. Yet because your soul is joined with me and the plane, part of you will stay here and follow me. Where will I be going while I'm here? To your throne, the Tetramet said. Now go through the red door. Theodosia gazed at the open serpent mouth and snarled. She took slow, soft steps as she made her way to the red door. She opened it and entered. She found her existence split into two realities. It was as if half of her were awake and the other half dreaming. She viewed two places at once and at the same time. She smelled the various aromas and sensed the different temperatures. The two realities were splitting, but they held together by her consciousness and the plane. She walked down the flaming steps, deeper into the serpent's belly, while the other part of her walked down the staircase of her antebellum home. Blood waterfalls surrounded her in one existence. She found her standing waist deep in the blood. Chunks of flesh, body parts, and organs bobbed up and down in the crimson pool. While in her human reality, she stood in the kitchen, greeted by the nocturnal sounds of the creatures of the night, Jojo dangling in her hand. She saw the cleaver in the butcher block. In the reality of the plane, the room shook, and a crypt emerged from the center. The crypt morphed into a massive ivory throne. Theodosia glided her hands across the smooth armrest. In her human reality, her other hand trembled as it gripped the handle of the cleaver. Once in her grip, the shaking stopped. Its form in her hand felt as natural as breathing. In the reality of the plane, Theodosia sat on a throne. The waterfalls became clear. In them appeared visions of human suffering. In her reality, she climbed the stairs, the cleaver in one hand as the other hand glided up the railing. She walked down the hallway to Jillian's room and eased the door open. Jillian was sound asleep. A peaceful look rested on her face, and an open book lay across her breast. Enjoy whatever dream you are having, Theodosia whispered, because you are about to awaken to a nightmare. A candle and matches sat on Jillian's bedside table. Theodosia placed the cleaver down, retrieved a match, and struck it. Jillian twitched at the sound of the match, but did not wake. The smell of the burning sulfur filled the room. Theodosia married the flame to the wick, and the candle lit. She placed the matches down and grabbed her cleaver. Theodosia smiled at her slumbering sister. Jillian, she whispered, it's time for dinner. I must feed. Jillian moaned and rolled to her side, her back facing Theodosia. Jillian, Theodosia said a little louder. We are hungry. We must feed. Jillian was half awake. If you're hungry, go get something downstairs. You don't need me. Oh, but I do, Theodosia said. Besides, I already went downstairs and got something. Jillian grew perturbed. What did you get? Roll over and I'll show you. Theodosia raised the cleaver, poised to strike. Jillian rustled her pillow in annoyance. Fine! She rolled over. Theodosia stood next to her bed with her arms raised. She held something in her hands, but in the dim light, Jillian couldn't tell what. Theodosia bore her teeth and flared her nostrils. Jillian rubbed her eyes, ridding them of their slumber. Something metal shimmered in the candlelight. Theo, what are you? There was a whistling sound followed by a loud crunch. Jillian's eyes rolled in the back of her head and the room spun. A burning sensation erupted in her chest, followed by a deep pressure. Theodosia gave a maddening shriek as the blade sank into Jillian's chest. A deep hollow thud echoed through the room and blood pooled under her nightgown in crimson circles. The event registered in Jillian's mind as she stared at the cleaver lodged in her chest. What she saw didn't make sense. Was it real? A dream? Why was Theo smiling like that? Fresh waves of pain traveled through her sternum. Yes, it was all real. All very, very real. The emotions flowing through her seemed to have no order to them. Panic, terror, and deep sorrow splashed against her inner being like sea billows. Oh God, Theo, why? Why? Tears filled Jillian's eyes and trickled down her cheeks. She raised a quaking hand and touched her sister's cheek. Staring into Theodosia's eyes, Jillian knew she was gone. Theo was not there. Whatever stood before her now had the body of her sister and the heart of the devil. Theodosia let her cheek. Why, Theo? Jillian reached for the cleaver with her other hand. Theodosia's hand gripped the handle. Jillian traced her sister's knuckles with her fingers and took deep, wheezing breaths. Theo! Jillian coughed up blood. She found it hard to breathe. Her eyes traveled to her nightgown. The entire gown, from collar to waist, was a deep red. Theodosia picked up Jojo off the floor with her other hand and placed her on the nightstand. The memories came in rapid succession. Jillian remembered when she gave Theo the doll. She also thought of all the times she aided her with her schoolwork. Jillian recalled the days of innocence when she used to help Mother bathe Theo as an infant. Then she thought of the darkness and all the odd behavior. And Jillian realized Mother was right. She had been right all along. Father never saw it. Father never wanted to see it. And Jillian, she had seen it. She had seen the evil in her sister all along, but never wanted to acknowledge it. Theo, why? I love you. I love you so much. You're breaking my heart. The wound to my flesh does not compare to the wound to my soul. Jillian gasped for air as life faded from her body. The last thing she remembered hearing before her soul departed to be with the Lord were these words. Why, Jillian? Theodosia asked. She wrapped her fingers tightly around the cleaver handle. Because I can! Theodosia cleaver from Jillian's chest, flinging blood across the room. She grabbed her dead sister by the wrist and yanked her off the bed onto the floor. Theodosia placed the cleaver under her arm, blew out the candle, and grabbed Jojo. She dragged Jillian's dead body out into the hall and down the stairs, leaving a trail of blood in their wake. Theodosia stopped in the kitchen. She placed Jojo in a chair and turned it to face them. Watch, Jojo, Theodosia said. Theodosia let go of Jillian's arm and gripped the cleaver again. She knelt by her sister's outstretched arms, raising the blade above her head. Whack! She brought the cleaver down on Jillian's shoulder. The sound of ripping flesh and crushing bone echoed through the kitchen. Theodosia let out a laugh and studied her handiwork. Tendon ligaments and strands of muscle still kept the arm to the shoulder. Blood poured from the shoulder and down into the wooden floor. Theodosia paused to the blood from the floor ground beneath. She gripped Jillian's arm by the bicep and pulled, stretching the unattached strand, still holding it in place. She lifted the cleaver and gave it another good strike. The arm separated from the shoulder. Theodosia took the severed arm and tossed it to the side. She positioned herself over Jillian's other shoulder. Whack! She chopped off the other arm and moved to Jillian's legs. Whack! Whack! She chopped off her feet. Again and again, Theodosia hacked away in a frenzy until all of Jillian's limbs were in pieces. Theodosia adjusted the mangled body of her sister as blood finished flowing. The entire kitchen floor was covered in the crimson liquid and severed limbs. Fingers, toes, and remnants of what used to be Jillian's arms and legs had been flung everywhere. The scene was one of absolute carnage. Jillian looked as if she had been mangled by a pack of wolves. Theodosia stood up and grabbed a carving knife from the counter. She knelt again and lifted Jillian's nightgown. She admired the wound in her chest. It was a dark, hollow crevice in between her breasts. Jillian's torso was covered in both dry and fresh blood. Theodosia traced her fingers across the lesion, smiling. She thrust her pointer finger into the gash and wiggled it around. She felt the outside of her sister's heart. It was warm and soft but strong. Theodosia dislodged her finger, clasped the handle of the knife in both hands, and raised it above her head. She shrieked, bringing the blade of the knife down into Jillian's belly. Theodosia twisted and turned the handle, circling the blade inside Jillian's gut. She jerked the blade downward, slicing left, then right. The smell of blood, bile, and dying organs made Theodosia's mouth water. She threw the knife across the room and reached both hands into the crude opening she had carved. She scooped out Jillian's organs onto the floor with a slosh, liver, pancreas, and stomach. My, Theodosia's voice was deep and gravelly. Such dainty, sweet Jillian. Theodosia turned her vision back to the gaping hole in her sister's midsection. She made a fist and plunged her hand into the cavity. She opened her hand, using her fingers to climb higher into Jillian's torso. She eased to the left, feeling the rib cage. Her hand descended more until she felt the heart. Come to me, dearest sister. Thea tickled the Jillian's heart with her fingertips, then clutched it in her palm. She jerked on it, ripping it from its chambers, and pulled it out of her body. Theodosia lifted the heart to eye level and licked her lips. She studied the organ with wonder and fascination. Amazing how something so small can be so powerful. She turned it over in her hand, admiring the ventricles, arteries, aorta, and atria. The tubes reminded her of the hallways of the ethereal plane. Upon making this observation, she licked her lips. Then she bit into the heart like a wild dog. The texture of the organ was a bit tough and chewy. The feel of it against her tongue made her eyes roll back in her head. A warm blast of blood exploded in her mouth. Theodosia swallowed it down and stood to her feet. She walked over to Jojo and placed the heart in her doll's lap. Theodosia returned to Jillian's body, where she sat on the floor and ate more of her sister. That is the end of that chapter.
It's a very gory story.
It does get that way, definitely towards the end. The last book is extremely violent.
I always felt so bad for Jillian.
Yeah, she saw it in Theodosia, but she never wanted to really believe it.
You know, I don't think anyone ever does when it's someone that, especially someone you love, and then you suddenly see them for who they are, and it's not good. Why would you want to see that?
Yep. So that is just a smidgen of what to expect in the morning. It gets way, way worse.
Now that I remember, it was way, way worse.
So it's one of those book series that intensifies as you go on. Like, you make it through the first book and you're like, okay, I can make it through that. And then the second one stretches you a little more, and you get through that. And then the third one really, really pushes your limits. So, but that's about all I can do tonight.
Oh, that was an intense reading.
It's an intense book.
I think that's the only thing that probably honestly scares me, is the idea of something that is totally bad or evil, if you will, just for without reason or without cause attacking good, and there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Yep. Well, my one of the things. Oh, you're very welcome, PW. You're welcome, Triple X Lady. You're welcome, Dustin. Glad y'all enjoyed it. One of the things I do, especially in the Dreadful Death series, right? Because the all of these events take place to a Christian family, a very godly family. Their father, Charles, is a religion professor of ancient documents at UNC Chapel Hill. And so there's some theological tenets weaved in and out of this story. I mean, it deals with the predestination and free will. It deals with the problem of evil. And one of the things, as far as my belief in evil goes, is that one of the things about evil is it is absolute chaos, and it doesn't need a reason. And that's what you see with that's what you see in all of it. There's simply no reason why this happens. There's no reason why Theodosia does what she does, and there's no reason why the Tetramet is her. It is just for the heck of it. It's absolute chaos, and that, for me, what evil is. It's absolute disorder.
Well, and I piggyback on that, and that's actually what makes a really good, thrilling, frightening story is when they just say it's just doing it just because it can. It's when stories over explain, then it loses something.
Yeah.
Again, just my opinion.
Yeah. The book never answers the question why, because there is no answer. It's simply because evil is chaos. So,
yep, very impersonal.
Yep. It deals with themes of love and hate. This is evil capable of love. I deal with that in the book series. What else comes out in this series? I deal with deception. I deal with moral gray areas as well. You definitely see that towards the end of the book with Pastor George Edwards. And when they are trying to figure out how to save the children and rid the town of the evil, there's some definitely moral gray areas that things have to be done and characters struggle with things. And, so I create some ethical things in the book, and evil can do that in our lives. It can create some moral and ethical tensions when we're put in certain situations. And that's what we have here. The pastor of the book is put within a situation that he never thought he would find himself in, and he has to make a choice. And whether it's right or wrong, that's left up to the reader to decide. So, but yeah, lots of fun themes. So this isn't just a horror story. It's just not blood and guts, although the end is very satisfying if you are a gore hound. There's, like I read tonight, there's some very scenes. They're the ones that I read aren't the paramount of the creepy scenes, but it can prepare you for what is in there. But it deals with deeper issues, and that's kind of like what I like to do in some of my writing. Is I use the horror genre as a vehicle to explore some of these these themes and these questions. So you can get those on Amazon if you want, or I have copies of them if you want signed copies. It will be a little more because I'll have to pay for shipping. It would be a little more than what you get it on Amazon, but if you want signed copies, you can email me, EzekielKincaid@gmail.com, or those of you who are on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, you can message me, and we can work that out, and I can get you those. But if not, you can pick them up on Amazon. The Kindle versions are obviously a lot cheaper than the paperback versions. And like I said, the thing, if you have Kindle Unlimited, is right now. But if you're at the point to where you want to spend that much on any of the books or everything, you can always pick up an issue of Southern Discomfort. Those are only 50 cents to $1. And the door that I showed y'all, let me pull that cover back up. I can find it. Aha. This has by far been my most popular Southern Discomfort issue. It's got everything in it. It's got emotion, character depth, tension, supernatural. I know some of you who are in the chat, this is the one that y'all have requested. But there's one more thing that we need to do before we end the show out. Do you know what that is, Bethany?
No, what?
We have to choose our final winner for the huge giveaway. We said we were going to be doing that Halloween night. So, for those of you who have been keeping up with the Southern Discomfort show, you know that while we did our whole psychic and supernatural series, just our psychic series, we did a supernatural one earlier, our entire series on psychic phenomenon, I picked a winner at the end of each show, and that person won a free copy of Southern Discomfort. We did the little spinny wheel. So what I did is, like I told y'all, I collected all the names of all of the winners. And those winners are going to be entered into the drawing. Now, I'm only doing the winners who actually claimed their prizes. So the people that I have that claim their prizes for the giveaway that will be entered into the drawing are Misty, Teresa, Triple X Lady, and PW. So it will come down to y'all, ladies. So I'm going to enter your names in the Wheel of Fortune. And what this is for is the winner gets free ebook copies of everything written. That includes the Johnny, that includes Dreadful Death, that includes every Southern Discomfort issue, short stories, everything that I have in print. Stop. I'm trying to set the wheel up and clear this out. Delete. All right. Y'all just bear with me while I am Getting our way up. So, and we said Misty. And Teresa. And Triple X Lady. And PW. Let me make sure that's everybody. All right. That is everybody. So I've got y'all's name entered. And we are going to go ahead and get in, all right? This is to see who is going to win copies of all of my stuff. Let's see who it is. All right, Teresa. I don't know if she was on tonight, but I will have to reach out to her and let her know that she won the final drawing. But there's still another way for you to win everything. If you buy a copy of Johnny Walker Ranger Volume 2, oh, here's Bethany's back.
Your streaming thing sucks. It keeps kicking me off.
That's okay. Teresa won.
Yay, Teresa.
So, but I was telling them, if you still want to win everything, there's still a way to do it. All you got to do is buy a paperback or ebook copy of Johnny Walker Ranger Volume 2. Don't have to have read the first one to understand the second one. If you buy a copy of it, whether the Kindle one or the paperback one, and if you review it on Amazon and you send me a screenshot of your purchase and your review, I will send you free copies of everything. So if you didn't win and you still want everything, that's the easy way to do it. That's all you got to do. So congratulations to Teresa. I will contact her and let her know, but thank you to everybody who did accept the free gift and read it. Thank y'all for reading and supporting. Thank y'all for listening tonight too. Thanks everybody for stopping by and chat. I hope y'all enjoyed the reading tonight. It looks like I put to sleep. I take that as a compliment because, like, doesn't like me. Like the Exorcist is my comfort horror movie. I put that in and sleep to it. So, with me reading something like that and putting Dustin to sleep with all of the instance gore and scary stuff, like I take that as a compliment that Dustin finds comfort in my stories. So. Thank you, Dustin, for that compliment of falling asleep while I was reading to you. Yeah, PW, I've thought of it, still thinking about it. I don't have the stamina right now. I'm doing that tonight, just not getting in. Definitely have to work up to it. Thank you, Cece. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Do you still have your clown mask on?
No, and it's not a clown mask.
Oh, that's right. Vodka Vance said that it was Kiss. Kiss.
Yeah.
Kiss.
And it was very sweet. Why? Do you want me to put it back on?
Yeah, let everybody see a Venetian mask. Anonymous the Clown. This is Bethany's costume. I had my Michael Myers mask on earlier. Okay, PW, you have a question. What is your question? Oh, look at that mask. What do y'all think that is? I think it's a clown mask. Yep, PW, I will read it live. Everybody, give it up for Venetian the Clown.
If I weren't worried about getting flagged, I would show you what I'm thinking right now.
I know. You don't. I already know what you're thinking. Yeah, PW said it looks like a purge mask.
I'll allow that.
Cool. Now, see, if we were together tonight, I should have worn my Art the Clown one. It'd go perfect with that. Black and white and black and white. Tiptoe through the tulips.
Okay, enough.
I need Dustin.
I think he's sleeping. He's sleeping.
I know. I'm putting him to bed. So, do you have anything else to say, Bethany, before we go ahead and call it a night here?
Pleasant nightmares.
All right, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Thank you for listening. I hope y'all enjoyed story time. We will be back Thursday night this week instead of Wednesday nights. We're gonna try Thursday nights because when we did that impromptu live on Thursday night, we got a lot more people and interaction than we do on Wednesday nights. So we're going to try the live stream on Thursdays. We will be getting back into the book of Revelation. We will be looking at some more of the 7 churches. So that'll be Thursday night. Look for the live stream once we create it. Go ahead, if you hadn't, liked and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can get the notifications when we do stuff. And everybody stick around because we're going to do our inspirational video that Dustin made that we do at the end of every show. But thanks everybody for stopping by. Thanks everybody for those of you who popped in and out. We love y'all and we appreciate the support. And still a few hours left for Halloween. So pick a very, very scary movie. If you want a suggestion, go back and watch the last live stream we did. We talked about tons of stuff that's out there. So hope y'all watch something scary tonight for Halloween and that it scares you so that you can't sleep. I hope my stories give some of y'all nightmares too. I honestly do. So, thank y'all again. And I am going to play this. So y'all please stick around for it. Boo Bear, you got anything else to say before I play it?
Pleasant nightmares.
All right.
Is this what giving up feels like? I don't know, I don't know. Tell me, have I lost my mind? Nowhere to go, so far from home. Is this what giving up feels like?